Hi. Today I'm sharing my food story with all of you. I've had a very long, painful journey around food. What I've said that I've had is binge eating disorder, which is basically characterized by eating large quantities of food and then fasting or not fasting, and just feeling a sense of shame or guilt afterwards. But I think that so many of us have some type of emotional relationship with food that is painful, and so I feel like I still do identify as having had binge eating disorder, but I think that anyone can struggle with this, whether you identify as having had bulimia or anorexia or orthorexia or any of the classified eating disorders, or not. I think that lots of us have stories around eating. So this is mine. From a young age onward, I remember using food as a way to reward myself. Like when I was really like in third grade, we got M&Ms. So food is also kind of like as a reward is woven into the fabric of this society. So we would get a golden ticket if we did well at lunch, picked up food, trash or something, and then we'd get M&Ms from this little gumball penny machine. So I remember getting M&Ms, but I would eat one at a time as I would do my work. So I'd finish a problem and be okay, now I get one. Finish another problem, okay, now I get an M&M, and just savor that moment of bliss, and then let myself have it once I finished a problem. So yeah, and I remember also even before that when I was a child, 3 in my mother's arms. We were living in New York before my sister was born, and we'd walk one way to go to this art class and then walk back the other way, and we would eat those Nutri-Grain bars, or no, Nature Valley, yeah, in the green package, the oat and honey ones. And I remember being on her shoulder and eating one on the way there and one on the way back, but I remember the way I savored it, I was just feeling so comforted by this food. And these things in and of themselves are not bad. Feeling comforted by food, not bad at all. It only becomes really painful when, or for me it became painful when I started to feel like food is what got me through the day. And going into high school, it absolutely was. The whole using one M&M at a time to finish a problem set became how I would do my homework, how I would do my projects, how I would stay up really late, just by eating, needing to eat in order to stay up late, getting out of bed and being exhausted and falling into the kitchen and having a bite of chocolate or a bite of a chip or just needing to have a sip of coffee, physically being dependent upon food, and also feeling a deep sense of despair and pain and loss when I would finish the food I was eating. And also coming home in the afternoon after school was over and after a stressful day and just eating a whole thing of ice cream or eating a bunch of brownies at a time and physically not being able to stop, just being compulsive about it, or definitely late at night. I mean, that's a time when for sure eating things would always come up, stopping by a donut shop, but not just okay, I'm gonna have this donut and I feel good about it and then I'm gonna go to bed and it'll be good, but feeling I couldn't get through the night if I didn't stop by Foster's Donuts on Foothill, which is the 24-hour donut shop in my hometown, and having to get my buttermilk bar, buttermilk bar and raised based donut, and just not being able to just feeling my life depends upon eating this donut, and as soon as I got it, eating it on the way home. and then like eating another one, and just like completely being out of touch with like what my stomach was feeling and what my body needed, because I was utilizing food as a way to bring me out of the deep emotional and spiritual pain that I was in. And so when I went to college, I took a year off after high school, and I did a trekking program in Peru and Bolivia, and then I did some volunteer work in Peru, and I ended up going to school in Colorado at Roth University, which is a Buddhist-inspired school. And when I was there, I got in touch with a lot of other people who had struggled with really similar patterns around eating. Food addiction, binge eating, whatever we want to call it. Like, so many people have had patterns around this. And yeah, really like starting to talk about it with people, and be candid about the things that I felt, and how I felt like completely out of control around food, and like it just unable to get through the day without like having certain eating patterns, being totally dependent on food, like, yeah, really, really intensely. And I'm just like feeling again like how intense it was at the time when I'm talking about it, because now I'm grateful that I feel like I've been able to work through a lot of that, but it's just like coming up again when I'm talking about it, because damn, like, addiction really is so painful. And I think that food addiction in particular is something that is like, it's enforced by our society, because of using food as a reward, and just like a lot of our social gatherings are around food. And so when people have these like patterns around food that we're trying to work through, it's hard to like be in social settings a lot of the time, because you'll be around food and like all these things are triggered, but then you're trying to have like a normal conversation, and it can be hard to manage all of those things. Okay. And so at Naropa, got in touch with other people, with mainly women, but some men as well, around just like similar eating patterns. But yeah, mainly with women. And a book. So I read 2 books while I was there, and they were both so helpful, because they were like, it was just like, finally I felt like someone had like put into writing the thing that I've been feeling for a long time. So the first book is called Women, Food, and God. So brilliant. And at the time, I was like, yeah, I'm an atheist, but loved the book. And so Women, Food, and God, like, it's about, essentially the hunger that I was feeling, that like need to eat things, to put them in my body, to fill up this like thing that I felt like I could never fill enough. The hunger isn't for food. The hunger is for this like spiritual longing. The hunger is for like deep intimacy and deep connection, and some just like a connection to the universe, a connection to nature, a connection to something beyond these 4 walls that I've been boxed into, something beyond the university system, something beyond capitalism, something sacred that I'd been aching for, but I hadn't had any access to, and no language around, and no community around. But that's what my hunger was for, that I was filling with food, filling the void with food, because that's all I knew how. That's all I knew how to do. That's what my addiction was, that I chose in this lifetime, was to fill my void with food. Food was a way to nourish myself. Food was my main self-care technique. Food was my companion, and a way to numb the pain. And something important that is talked about in the book Women, Food, and God, and in some other books that I'm going to reference, is that at the time when I was using food as a means to cope, which is what I was doing, it was not the worst. It was not the worst decision I could have made. Or what I mean by that is, it was wise. to use food as a way to cope. And that's a concept that was totally brought to my attention from the book Women, Food, and God, and also from the book Eating in the Light of the Moon, which I cannot say enough about this book. If you were to read one or the other, I would say read Eating in the Light of the Moon by Anita Johnston. This book is so powerful. For me, I felt like this one resonated even more deeply with me because the format of the book is folk tales or myths or stories. So she tells stories and then she analyzes them afterwards and applies them to women's relationship with food. So yeah, and I think that this really helped me because it felt like there was like even more of this like poetic influence in this book. But the other book, Women, Food, and God, I think has more practical tips. So yeah, they're both amazing, but if you only want to read one, I think just depends on if you want something that's like very practical, like do this way, Women, Food, and God. If you want the like poetic aspect that feels like it addresses like more of like the ethos, then Eating in the Light of the Moon is powerful. I love this book so much. My mom has actually been reading it, which is very special to me. And yes, so they talk about how any coping method that we use, that it's important that we create love for the part of ourselves that is using that coping mechanism, whatever it is. Whether it's food or any type of drug or cutting or exercise, or like, and around food, or the opposite of starving ourselves, whatever coping mechanism we've developed, it's really important that we nourish the part of ourselves that was inclined to use that as a coping mechanism, because it's how we knew how to get through things at the time. Reading these books helped me to see my own wisdom and to see the depth of pain that I had been in by virtue of living in a culture that is so drastically out of touch with nature and so drastically out of touch with our bodies, and how I'd internalized a lot of the cultural beliefs and ancestral beliefs that have been passed down through my family, and that how my mom and my parents were passing down the beliefs to me that they'd been taught too. So okay, my journey with food. So it wasn't like I read these books and like bam, like everything's fine. Oh my goodness, no, not at all. That was like scratching the surface of this healing journey. It just knowing that, just recognizing that like my hunger is for something deeper than food was profound. And so I healing my emotional relationship to food is something that is still in progress, and might be in progress for a long time. But where I feel like I am right now is that I have identified things that make me feel alive and nourished that are not food. One is making these videos because I'm able to share my voice, playing guitar, singing, oh my god, writing, going outside in nature, doing yoga, dancing, connecting with people that I love, drawing, doing pottery, learning about my body and my cycle and fertility awareness. So many things that I've found, that these like vehicles that I found and I'm finding that like nourish me more than food does. And being able to delve into my psyche and my like spiritual self, and finding a community that like is also delving into their psyches and their spiritual selves and validating me as not crazy. All of these things are helping me heal from food, but it was kind of a miracle to like connect with people at Naropa who had struggled with this too, and to connect with reading these books because up until then I thought that there was something wrong with me for not being able to control my eating. That like, oh, it's all about self-control. How many times had I tried dieting? And I also, something I hadn't even touched upon in this video was about body image. But I'd say that my struggles with body image are not nearly as severe as a lot of other people, that a lot of dear friends of mine that I have, but mine were so subtle yet constant that they went undetected for a long time. But just, of course, an obsession with thinness, and like an obsession, like, and no matter how thin I am, just wanting to be thinner, or you know, like wanting to have like the perfectly flat stomach, or all of these like desires around my body, and in moving into my body more and more and accepting her as she is, and uncovering the layers of like conditioning around craving thinness. Yeah, it's interesting how food plays a role in that as well. But what I was saying about like just thinking for a long time that like there's something wrong with me for not being able to control my eating tendencies, and thinking that I thought that the solution to my binge eating was related to food. I thought it was related to food and to what I ate and my ability to eat or not eat it. But it was like this like breath of air, like deep belly breath into my tummy, when I learned that it's not. It's about longing for something that I don't have an answer to right now, and filling that with food, because this culture doesn't allow space. It doesn't allow space for the mysterious. It doesn't allow space for the darkness. It doesn't allow space for the artistic. A lot of the times, space for the free flowing, the just like the juice and the confusion. This culture doesn't allow space for that. Everything is very quantifiable and very fast-paced and very productive and very in your mind, like, oh, you're eating too much, oh, therefore you have this disorder, and therefore, blah, 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 like something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with any of us. We're all whole. And I deeply believe that my experience with food is not unique, that a lot of us are struggling with just feeling powerless when it comes to food. And I wanted to share my story to speak about this, because it's not spoken about nearly enough, and to also share the books that were really helpful to me, and to just sort of say that I was deeply in the pattern of compulsive eating and overeating at every single meal, and now I'm not. And so it's possible to heal. And one other really important thing that I want to say is that while I'm like, yeah, I'm not in the same pattern anymore of feeling powerless to food, this is a healing journey. And so one of the most crucial things that I've learned on this healing journey with food is to give myself love in the moments where I do overeat, or when I binge, or when I feel like I've done something wrong on the healing path. That's when we need love the most, and that's when we don't give ourselves enough love, because it feels so hard. Just so many nights I have been in fetal position, rocking my bloated belly on my bed, not even able to cry because I feel so numb, and just feeling self-hatred. So many nights. And so little by little, I've started infusing those moments with love, just finding one part of my body that wants to give my stomach love. And usually it's my heart, where I'll just find an inkling like it's okay. And really treating myself like I would a baby, like I would my own child. Because in those moments, that's when I need love. And I really have found that this healing hasn't been possible until I learned how to sit with that pain I feel when I do overeat. Yeah. So thank you for listening. One more book I did want to mention is called At the Root of This Longing, Reconciling a Spiritual Hunger and Feminist Thirst. I read the first half of it. It's more analytical than the others and doesn't relate directly to food, but it's totally in the same vein. Totally in the same vein. And it's also a powerful one. So that's all. I wrote an article called Eating Away My Emotions. Yes, that's the name of it, I believe. Eating Away My Emotions on Elephant Journal about a year ago that I will share the link to in the description, and it just sort of details my journey with food as well. And again, this is healing is cyclical, and I think I would like to talk about this more in a future video and maybe offer some practical tips that I have done to heal, because I know it's super freaking hard and it takes time. So yeah, it's important to just come back to our bodies and be there and know that it's okay to use food as a tool sometimes to nourish ourselves, and know that it's okay to use food as a means to soothe the pain sometimes. It's okay. It's okay to do that. And also, it's okay to let ourselves heal and to adopt new patterns and create a new relationship with food. Both are okay. Sending you love.